What is up, family? It is Monday. This man Monday live stream, and I had another epiphany. So one of my homeboys did tell me to take a break from these just because, and I did take a little break, obviously, but I think that I know that these live streams were really bringing engagement, not just from the shorts. The videos were bringing engagement, and then when I broke down the videos and made them into clips, they were bringing a lot of engagement to the channel. So I really can't stop these, and it's to the point where I might even take a break from the podcast a week or two, but then I have to keep these going. And also, if I plan to be a consistent streamer, I can't take a break from this because at some point I'm gonna be having to do this type of stuff every single day. So I can't really. I have this is the practice, and everything God has us do, we have to do with excellency. So I feel like moving forward, I have to just do these rain, sleet, or snow, no excuses. So hold me accountable. I think that unless it's like a big emergency, like maybe even if I'm out of town, maybe that would be the only excuse. But I wouldn't even get to the point where I'm out of town. I'm still doing these because I want to show that I'm dedicated, not necessarily to y'all. I mean, to myself, to the Lord. How y'all doing now? Now, what we do have to get consistent with is the guest. But unfortunately, today we were gonna have one, but he couldn't come last minute. Where he lives, there was the power outage, so he couldn't make it. So he just said we'll have to reschedule, but that's fine because again, I'm here and this is my show, right? All right, y'all. So before we get into things too deep, let's first get into the recap of the most recent episode featuring my guy, Dr. Vadim. All right, so we talked about fear. Now, here's something funny about that episode. So with that episode, he thought that the recording was going to be a consultation or just kind of like to see how the episode was going to be set up. I said, no, we're going to do the episode right now. He was like, what? Well, I'm not ready. I said, and it's funny because he was preaching on fear. And I'm like, you ready? I promise. I said, it's going to be things about you. Like it's, you know how I do my shows. It's going to be, we're attacking a topic, but it's a topic you're an expert in. And then we're asking questions about you. You don't have to prepare for you. You know you, right? So we did the episode talking about fear, which was inspired by, his stuff, but also that verse in the Bible, which, with Job, and I said it then when he was like, the thing I fear came to life. And it's just reiterating even now, you hypothetically laying in your bed, thinking about the worst case scenario, thinking about something that may never even happen and just letting it drill your head in. You know what I mean? And I've been there, I probably have done it recently. A little bit, but I know how to catch myself, or at least try to catch myself. Like, nah, we're not doing that today, because it's been times I didn't came up, with stuff that was never gonna happen, never happened, not even close. And a lot of times that happens to us, and we'll just be sitting in the bed, just stressed out, just big stressed out, and it's like it wasn't gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. And you know, and then you have to think worst case, even if it does, then what? So what? What now? What you gonna do? And when you realize that, you think the worst case scenario, you think about, well, what can happen? It's like it still ain't the worst thing on earth, and it probably was worse in your head than it was in real life. I like this episode. Now, it's one of my more, I feel like, informative episodes because he is not from the United States. And so it could be a little hard to understand him. So I, of course, tried to, I don't want to say youngin it up, but I did definitely try to add some more entertainment value to it, because it was, kind of hard to get that. But I think we did a good job. It's a decent episode. It's still one that's needed. I feel like even if necessarily it might not be one of the more funner episodes, it was still a good one. But see, that's okay, because I know for a fact I have some episodes lined up, but I know for sure the next two are more on the funny. So, but I'll explain it towards the end. But I really enjoyed this one still. I filmed it over a month ago, and yeah. All right, y'all. That's the net. Like I said, it's just me today, so we're gonna probably blow through some things quick. Now, y'all uncle Charlemagne made a comment at InvestFest on the Shade Room, and I want to talk about it. So we're about to listen to this quote or this thing he said, and I want you to tell me what you think that y'all uncle said. Let's load it up.
You know, somebody just literally asked me that question. They say, what's the greatest investment that you've ever made? And I said, the greatest investment I ever made was paying that $150 an hour to start going to therapy in 2016. Because I don't care how much money you got in your pocket. If what you got in your head and your heart is not right, then, you know, you're not going to be happy. So what is having all of that money if you're not happy? To me, that's what success is. Success is happiness. Are you doing what makes you happy? I don't care if you're making multi-millions of dollars. If you are doing something that doesn't make you happy, you're not successful.
Definitely. And we see that you are successful. #1 radio show, Black Effect Podcast Network, all of these successful ventures, New York Times bestsellers list. But what is the brokest that you've ever been?
The brokest I ever been, I've been broke. Like, I've been dead broke. I'm gonna tell you the brokest I felt was after I got fired from radio for the 4th time. And what does true wealth mean to me? I had to live back at home with my mom in Moncks Corner, South Carolina when I was like 31, 32 years old. And my daughter was like 1 or 2 years old. And being that I had been fired 4 times, I had never collected any unemployment checks. So I was still getting $1,100 a week. And I got $1,100 a week for a whole year. But that was the brokest I ever felt because I had a child. So it wasn't just about me, you know, and my wife had to move back home with her parents in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. So that year, it was 2010, like from like October 2009 to about November 2010. That's the brokest I ever felt.
And what is the one move that you made from that movement that you feel guaranteed your success?
Actually, going back home was the best move. And I'll never forget, you know, Kendra G, you know, who I love dearly. You know, Kendra G told me a long time ago, when I got fired from Philly, she told me to enjoy the time that I'm going to have at home, because when I get back in position, I had to live back at home with my mom. I'm not going to have no time. And she was absolutely right. So, you know, for whatever reason, being in that position, I never felt like that was permanent for me. I always knew that, you know, that next level for me was going to be exactly what it's been. And you know, I remember Kendra saying that to me. She literally said, enjoy the time you having at home now, because when you get back in position, you're not going to have no time. So I think just, you know, just having that faith that there's another level, you know?
Okay, my last question. If you could tell anyone who wants to be wealthy one thing to invest in, what would you tell them to invest in?
Man, invest in your happiness. Like I'm telling you that it's telling somebody like, you know, I want to be wealthy. What does that even mean? Because you'll never have enough. You got these freaking billionaires out here trying to be trillionaires. You got these 100 millionaires trying to be, you know, billionaires. Like, you'll never have enough if your goal is money. Like, you know, go after happiness, man. Like, you know, sit your down with somebody and I'm not going to have no unpack some of that trauma and, like, you know, really deal with what's going on in your head and going on in your heart. Find that real happiness, you know, and then you'll be successful. That's real wealth to me, being happy. Unpack some of that trauma and, like, you know.
All right, y'all. A lot to unpack. What does this have to do with mental health? So, I mean, study of how we act, think, and feel. We know that Dr. Charlemagne is an advocate for mental health in every way possible. And people like him, you know, similar, I feel like, to people like me, from the angle of when they speaking it real, sometimes people will get caught up in who said it, and because they don't like them, they don't want to listen. But in this, I was smiling. I don't know if y'all saw it. I was smiling when he was talking, because he said the brokest he ever was when he was 31, 32 years old. I'm 31 right now, right? And sometimes we think life is over at 31. I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people I'm learning are having quarter life crisis. Remember a few years ago, we did that podcast series, Quarter Life Crisis, and they're not married. I think he had, at least he was, I don't know if him and his wife was married at the time. I think they might have been, or they was together. They had a child together at least, and he's still with her now. But I've talked to so many people who are 31, about to turn 31. I need to just go ahead and get married. I don't have no kids. I need to be put up. I need to be taken care of. And you know, some people really feel like they don't want to work. You know, some people feel like life is over. Some people have to start over at 31. Some people might have had kids and was married, and now they divorced at 31. And they just feel like, you know, I'm not doing enough, and social media don't help. And sometimes parents don't help. And they'll be like, well, why you not doing this? And is everything okay? And that's why people when we talk about what he just said about investing, we always talk about investing in stocks and all that stuff, and that's great. But you need to invest in yourself. I feel like, and not just mentally. I do agree mentally for sure. Therapy is expensive. Again, I say again and reiterate as many times as I can. If you're in school, a lot of these schools pay for it. If you work in education, I know at least in Texas, it's covered in the fees. So you need to look into your job and try to see if you can get that. But the point that I'm making is you will have to go through a moment of so much unpack that he said. So I'm trying not to get ahead of myself. So I'm gonna just stay right here with the investing, right? Therapy works. I know people say it don't, or I don't believe in that, and I'm not paying nobody for advice. Anybody says that is an idiot. I don't care who you are. I don't care if we best friends. I don't care if you my cousin. I don't care if you could sit here and say that anybody that investing in therapy or you're not going to therapy because you're not paying for advice, you're an idiot. Flat out. I don't care who you are. And if that's how you really feel, tell me why you feel that way. Tell me why you feel that way. Because if you could figure out all your problems, why aren't they figured out? If you could figure out all your problems, why they not figured out now? Exactly. You don't say you don't have no problems. We all got something. So investing in happiness, I do agree with that. Now, unless you a man and you want to get OnlyFans, if you're a dude who want to do OnlyFans, I'm sorry, you'll do anything for money. Really, OnlyFans is bad for everybody. But as a man, if you're trying to get on OnlyFans, we had an episode about that. Yeah. I'm not even gonna go in depth about it because I did a whole episode on it, but I want y'all to check that out. What was I about to say? And also, that don't even bring y'all. People who do OnlyFans don't even be happy for it. They be depressed. You know, the people that be getting them testimonies, they be getting delivered, and they talk about OnlyFans and the corn industry and how depressed and stuff they was. So that's a fake high. If you say I'm happy, it's fake. What else? So investing in that. Going back to what he said about 31. So you feeling like you 31 and you ain't married, you ain't got your life together. It's okay because a lot of people didn't. And so that goes to prove once again, you hear from these people who are now, he is a radio Hall of Famer. He was fired from the radio for the 4th time before becoming a radio Hall of Famer. So after second time you got fired, you probably thought you wasn't nothing. But to get fired 4 times and now radio Hall of Famer, love that. Then also he owns the podcast network Black Effect. So you know what I'm saying? And he's in his 40s now, but it's just like, you don't have to have life figured out at 30. And this is crazy because this is a live stream and this feels like a podcast episode. You don't have to have your life figured out at 30. I'm going to keep saying that. I don't care. You don't have to figure out your life at 30. And that man was 31, 32 with a 1-year-old. Like, and his stuff didn't start happening until like right after that. So really, he probably ain't seen no real motion to 33, 34. You know what I'm saying? And also something he said, and this was something that I was believe about me, and where I've been in these last few years, where the lady told him, like, enjoy the time at home now. He said, because when you get in position, ain't no break. And for me, I have been chilling. And I remember when I first started being an entrepreneur full time, I remember thinking in my house, like, you know, I enjoy going to the store wearing anything crazy, because after a while you won't be able to do that. Enjoy waking up and just going to the gym at any time of the day and just coming back, responding to emails later or working on this later, because you're not going to be able to enjoy this for long. You know, it's going to seem like a long time because you don't know when the next thing going to come. But when you look back, you're going to be like, I missed the times where I would just wake up and say, I'm going to go run for a day, go outside and run a day. Or I'm going to go do this later, or putting off stuff. And it's like, them days are coming to a swift end. And sometimes we think 2 years ain't a long time, or is a long time, but it really ain't. It really ain't. Let me move to the next segment for today with this conversation. WWID, what would I do in this situation? Honestly, I like where his head is at. You know, he said some good stuff. I think that was, I wish my homeboy was on here to discuss this, because I really wish somebody else could have heard that live on air with me. But I just like that if in that situation, to tell your testimony and tell when you were your brokest, because a lot of times we scared to say when we was broke. And for me in this season of my life, and things have shifted, still not where they need to be. It's still been a little rough, but nowhere near like it was. But I was known as the friend with the money. I was the people borrow money from it. There's been times I've been asking, hey, let me borrow this real quick, I'll give it back. And I give it back. But for me to be borrowing money from people is crazy, because that has never happened. You know, I just didn't have it. You know, bill collector still at my door. I'm starting trying to pay them back now, but you know, I couldn't do it. And he talked about moving back home. Would I move back home if God said so? But I don't believe he has. And let's talk, so in this situation, would I move back home? No. because at this point it would cause my lease don't end to January of next year. So I would have to basically break a lease and move back to be in my mama house. That move itself would cost too much. And now I really don't have to, because now I have guaranteed rent money. If nothing else, I got my rent gonna be paid for, and my rent is dirt cheap. And then it's like, what do I do with my car? My car is older. Would I ship it back? Like that. So at this point, I wouldn't. But for people who may live closer to home or maybe legit have to, we have to sometimes bite the bullet. So let's take the extract it. What happens when you have to do something you said you would never do? Well, one, that would never happen to me because I never say never. But what happens when you do something, when you have to do something you said you'll never do? What do you do then? What do you do then? Because at that point, it's nothing else you can do. So apparently, my baby, we live, we can do this. I said that pumpkin pie was better than sweet potato pie. I thought I said something like real controversial. I mean, that is, but I thought it was something even more, But while are we on the topic, it's fall season. I'm a black man and I like pumpkin pie better than sweet potato pie. Do I need to be canceled? If so, tell me why. Why do I need to be canceled for liking pumpkin pie? Because half of you black people, only reason y'all don't like pumpkin pie is because white people like it. But it's actually good. It's actually good. Now back to the situation. Moving back home. Well, what happens if you have to do something you say you'll never do? That's why I never say never. That I do say, because I'm telling y'all, God has a funny way of humbling us. And I've tried to warn somebody recently when they was like, I don't want to tell their business. I ain't gonna do that. WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, Jesus wouldn't have to move back home, but what Jesus have to do something he said he would never do? No, because everything he said he was gonna do, right? Now, in this case, the ethically and morally correct thing to do is do what God tells you to do. Even when we hate it, even when we don't want to do it, even when it's just something and sometimes God will put you in a position where you'll be forced to do what you said you wasn't going to do. That's something to think about. You'll be forced. And then that's when it's like, you don't want it to have to get to that. Because usually when you're forced to do it, you have to, and I'm learning from experience, that's when you have to go through like a catastrophe. And it's just not worth it. What should men do in this situation? You should do whatever it takes to provide for your family, but also bite that bullet. And if you do have to do something you don't want to do, and there's so many scenarios here, like move back home is a big one. What's another one? Full-time entrepreneur, you got to go back to get a job. Have I said I never go back to teaching? Honestly, I don't think I ever said I wouldn't go back. And for me, I can't go back. They're not hiring me. Now, is that like that forever? Maybe not. I believe personally, I probably was aiming too low. And that's the thing. I think I need to, if I do get another job again, it's going to be the perfect job. It won't be no, and jobs are different. So you might get a job and salary and all that good stuff, but it might be not the conventional. It might not necessarily be somewhere you go to every day. It might, you know what I'm saying? So I can never say never, but I believe with the stuff I was applying for was low-hanging fruit. And I'm standing on that. And I'm going to stand on that. So we're going to end it with that. All right, y'all. And this is where we get a little sticky today. So we're going to be talking about Lil Nas X. And I'm going to give my honest take on this opinion of this situation. So there was a video we're going to watch. It's talking about his arrest. This is from Fox 5 New York. So I'm about to share my screen. We about to watch this and go from there.
Old Town Road rapper Lil Nas X has been charged with battery on a police officer after he was arrested and hospitalized in Los Angeles.
Well, there's video of him, and here he is just walking the streets. The artist, whose real name is Montero Lamar Hill, he was arrested yesterday morning after he was seen in a video, first obtained by TMZ, wandering down the street, acting erratically, saying crazy things, and not wearing much but his underwear and a pair of cowboy boots. He reportedly punched an officer twice in the face that morning, and that led to his arrest. Police say he was also taken to the hospital, maybe for a possible overdose. Lil Nas X is still behind bars at this time. His reps have not commented on the situation. We hope he's well.
Yeah, that was at 5 a.m, and he's obviously going through some type of episode of that, whether it's drug induced or some type of other mental issue.
Not good. We wish him well.
All right, WWID. No, my bad. What does this have to do with mental health? So we never want to celebrate nobody's fall or nobody who is going through it or no one who is mentally struggling in any way. So there's clearly something going on. My conspiracy brain gets to going. So I'm going to hold off on that as long as I can. But with Lil Nas X, he's been trolling for years. You know, he's known, he's the main troll. But I know a lot of people, especially many Christians, I didn't already seen the Christian TMZ pages going crazy with this. And some of which I do believe God led them to do. All of them I don't. But long story short, a lot of them are basically implying that this is his judgment because, or the beginning of it at least, because he's made fun of Christians and Christianity for a very long time now, when mocking the devil and mocking Jesus by putting on a Jesus outfit and doing a communion, trying to be funny with that. And he's just done a lot of blatantly disrespectful things to the Christian religion. But as I've heard many people before say, why do people go so hard with disrespecting Christianity, but they don't disrespect any other religion? Me personally, playing devil's advocate, I think that a lot of times they do that because in their mind, Christianity, people try to force Christianity on them versus like Muslims. They're just kind of like, we do us. And then it's like, you know, Buddhism, or we do us. And it's like, to the world, Christianity looks like, oh, y'all trying to force y'all religion on us. And so, you know, and with him being an openly gay man, you know, he's already, you know, by biblical standards, you know, damned to hell in his mind. And so he's, you know, and based, you know, so he like, well, I might as well just do what I want to do. And the study of how we act, think, and feel. Me personally, I believe when a lot of people like mock Christianity like that blatantly, I really believe they got some type of church hurt or something happened to them, and they're trying to. That's their way of getting back at it because they were hurt by somebody in the church or the church people or just the people who call themselves Christians. Even if somebody maybe did give them a warning or prophetic word and they didn't want to hear it and they just kind of, you know, lash out. So you just have to pray for people like that. WWID, what would I do in this situation? So, you know, he was fighting the police. He's behind jail. You know, something had been happening to him. He had got struck with Bell's palsy. For those that don't know what that is, that's when half of your face goes numb for temporarily. Sometimes it leaves permanent damage. I guess with him it didn't. But the beauty of what God does is, you know, I'm going to say that for the next one. But what I'll say with this situation is, obviously, I wouldn't be off no drugs fighting police and walking in my drawers in the middle of the street. However, what happens when you lose your mind, because we've all been in a position where and maybe not to that extreme, but when you are going through it and losing your mind, you don't know what you might do or not do. So in his defense, I will say that he's showing signs of somebody losing his mind because he's been a troll for years. And I don't think he's trolling. I think he's really going through something. And when you're going through something, you're not yourself. So you might do something you never said you would do. We're going back kind of what I said with the Charlemagne thing. We always say never, and I never say never. But I mean, sometimes when you listen, like I said, cocaine is a hell of a drug. I don't know if he's done cocaine. I don't know what he's done. Like I said, this could just be an act. I don't believe that, but we have to just throw it out there that it could be. And when I say an act, I'm not saying he's trying to cry for help. I'm saying he might just be another stunt, but I don't think this is. And all I'm going to say is, you always get warned, and there's always grace before a final lashing. I'll just say that. WWJD, what would Jesus do? So again, going to, I said, the beauty of the God situation is God typically always gives warnings. And he warns you alone. I keep saying this. And then after he warns you alone, several times that don't work, he's sending people to warn you about what you're doing. He did have some warnings. Now, we do know that Marcus Rogers, I mean, I'm sure it was other ones, but Marcus Rogers publicly warned Lil Nas X some years ago. And he publicly warned him, and then Lil Nas X mocked him. And again, that wasn't the only one. That was the one we know he responded. I know that he responded to. I believe he did it when I was still on Twitter, and I ain't been on Twitter like that, regularly with my own profile, years. So what I'll say is ethically and morally correct thing to do for anybody, whether it's a Lil Nas X. You might have a Lil Nas X in your family. You might have a Lil Nas X in your friend group. And what I mean by that is someone who's just blatantly rebellious and who's just lashing out and who is clearly going through it. And clearly, a lot of times when people do that stuff, it's a cry for help in some way. I mean, it's easy to say just pray for them, but people like that, honestly, and people might not want to hear this, that's somebody you nearly just need to sit down and just chop it up with. Just see where their head is at. Just see why they doing that. Like, why are you acting like this? What happened? What, just to see where their head is at. Because I'm telling you, them type of conversations go a lot further with people than people realize. And WSMD, what should men do? So if this is you in this situation, obviously, I would say if I were you in this situation, it's kind of hard what to say, because if you have lost your mind, it's like, but if you know somebody that's like a Lil Nas X, him as well, but anybody else, one, pray for him. But if you can talk to him, sit down with him, I think that you should, because like I said, everybody lashes out and everybody rebels in different ways. Everybody, it's different for everybody. And that's all I'm going to leave it with that, because I don't want to just start rambling. All right, y'all. So that's it for today. Now, Thursday's episode of the podcast, this is going to be a fun one. So we've talked about not having a job and, F that job and teaching people how to be their authentic selves at work. And we've kind of sprinkled conversations about jobs. But this episode is going to be good because this features a good friend of mine from high school. And we were talking about being young Black entrepreneurs who can't get a job. All these degrees and all these connections, and we can't get a job in this economy. The economy is bad. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, does God want us to have a job? God might not want us to have a job. We unpack that. And we really, really break down a lot of good stuff. So I'm interested to see how y'all are going to receive it. But, if you've been struggling to get a job, this is definitely going to be relatable. If you got a job, but you want to pursue entrepreneurship, this will be a good episode for you, or you just want a good laugh. This will be a good episode. You might love your regular job and you just want a good laugh and a different perspective and insight for like-minded individuals. Then this episode is for you too. So that's all we got, y'all. Thank you for tuning into the live streams. Again, my eyes have been opened. I have to do these every Monday. No excuses unless I'm out of town. And even then, it'll get to the point where I got to push past that. So as always, PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are. Make your mind up. Don't let it make you. And always remember, I love us for real.